everybody. Welcome back to Talk with TQ and the Energy Stoners Cafe. Tonight, I have an extraordinary guest, as usual, and her name is Dr. Pat Boulogne. Her background is so extensive that I'm going to actually read it from her LinkedIn profile, which is where I found her. And I feel that was a lucky find because she is something else. She's a consultant, executive coach, a wellness strategist. She's a mindset mastery expert, and she works to empower high achieving professionals to optimize their health, boost performance, and drive productivity without burnout. I'm really excited to have her on the show tonight, and we are going to learn a lot about how we can improve ourselves. Sure, how do you actually help high performing professionals like achieve mastery?
Well, the thing is that a lot of people don't even realize that they're sick. So it's just like anything that you do. And I used to teach, my patients, I said, anything that if you take one suggestion that I do and use it, implement it, it will change your life. And it's a good start. I mean, you could drink more water and have a better experience in your life with that. So, for someone who's a high achiever, who's not achieving, a lot of people don't, they might realize that they're struggling at achieving, but they keep on pushing through, but they don't know what's wrong and can't put their finger on the pulse in order to explore what that really is. So, a lot of times when people come to me, they're saying like they know something's wrong, or they just don't feel good, or they don't just digest their food, they're not sleeping well, and they hate work and their home life is not so great, because they are like, they're burning, the candle at both ends. And at some point in time, that candle implodes when it meets one end, meets the other end, and wherever that center is at.
A
So,
lot of people, and I know who are professional in one way or another, they find that they find themselves getting physically ill with
mhm.
no apparent explanation.
Well, there is an explanation for it. It's just they haven't discovered it, and a lot of times when you're so entrenched with your own crap that you don't realize that you're, like I'm not driving a jalopy, I'm driving a car, and it's just like, but you're driving a jalopy, and it's just like, is your body a Ferrari? Is it a Lexus? Is
Mhm,
it, if you want to equate it to, we're just talking about Watkins Glen before we started, which
mhm.
is Formula Racing, supreme. And so it's just like, what kind of car do you want to drive in your life for your health? If all rising tides lift all boats, and you equate the analogy of a boat to your body better be in good shape, or else you're not going to float, you're going to sink.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't know that they have holes, or they have issues, in certain organ systems, or how they're thinking, or even like, their presentation and how they're dressing. They just don't have clarity of thought. They're not moving better. They're not thinking better. They're not feeling better, and like, every day is a struggle for them, so those things eventually affect how you think. And I just said it, 2 seconds ago, how you feel, how you move, it's that whole spectrum. But it all starts with, what you put in your mouth.
What you put in your mouth, what you eat.
Hmm.
And isn't there also consumption that you have is in terms of what you're watching, what you're consuming with the media? You
Oh, for
know,
sure. Thoughts
yeah.
can undo anything that you do to fix, there's 3 reasons why people get sick. One is inflammation, the second one is, toxicity, and the other one is your thoughts. And if you fix the inflammation, which can actually start at birth during the birthing process, you gotta think that there's a lot of pulling and twisting, which can injure the cervical area of the neck of the baby, and nobody ever really looks at that except a chiropractor. And then, you have, the toxin part of it, the world's so toxic today. People have no clue. If you are drinking tap water, stop immediately. It's just like you don't want to do it. It's just like find a water filtration system, or a reverse osmosis system that you can afford and you can use. But make sure it clears out all the TDSs. That's my pro tip for people tonight. Don't drink tap water. It has atrazine in it, which affects, reproductive systems. In fact, in frogs, it makes them into hermaphrodites. So
What?
it's Yes, it's true. There's white paper to support that statement, and you can look up, atrazine. It's a chemical. It's a chemical from farming, and it's in all our tap water. And there's other like toxins. In 2010, the CDC did this study, and they found out that out of the 2,500 people that were tested, all of them, not some of them, all of them had 212 possible dangerous chemicals from the environment in their blood, in their urine. That's
Wow.
huge, and you wonder why people get sick, where they have, brain fog, so and the 3 reasons why people get sick between, the inflammation, which is usually can start at birth, it's like, the fender benders, bumps, scrapes, falling out of trees, things like that, and to, like, moving over to the toxicity from the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food that, you eat, the, air that you breathe, the cleaning, chemicals. You've gotta read labels, people. You've gotta read labels, and you
Yeah.
have to know what they mean, and also the, like, gardening types of things too. People's hands are in dirt, it's just like, you gotta wear gloves, you have to protect yourself from your environment, and if
Yes.
your thoughts are not clear, if you don't have clarity of thought, and that consciousness of thought, then what happens is that, it can undo whatever you do to fix the trauma, and also the toxicity in the environment, it can undo that up to 7 times.
Wow.
It's just like awareness about your health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially, and even financially is huge. It is crucial.
But I'm curious about what you feel is the effect of health of stress on health, because I've seen people become sick, really sick, because they were under a lot of stress and they just kind of poo-pooed it, just kept on pushing forward. There's a lot of that, I think, especially in the New York metropolitan area. A lot of people are just
They
determined
don't
to
even
acclimate
they're
to the
so stressed that
stress.
they don't know that they're so stressed that they don't know they're stressed, so they think
Yeah.
stress is normal. So
Yeah.
it's like it's their new normal, but stress has got a lot of signs and symptoms, chronic illness and disease, for instance,
Mhm.
not sleeping, or not sleeping well and waking up, with the ability to hit the ground running, things like headaches, things like bloating, things like stomach pain, stress can show up as heart attacks, for instance.
Mm.
The statistic for, I can't it was I thought it was a funny statistic at the time in a way, but, like, years back, I heard the statistic that, the people men especially don't know that they have heart disease until they have a heart attack and die.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
think about that statistic, and it's something like 75%. Um, and so and that was a statistic that I read. I couldn't tell you where I can verify that today. But there's a lot of things out there, like, and it just depends on, stress is good too, because stress stresses your limits. But if you also take that stress and you use it in a proactive way, then it can be beneficial. It's just the way that, your body responds to it. So it's just like you either choose, and that's where people sometimes perhaps even that would go into burnout also. People choose how to respond to things. People choose to be mad, and they
Mm.
choose to hold on to grudges. They choose to like eat crappy food. It's just a choice. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's convenient. Maybe one time, but, making that, a habit into a ritual, I don't think so.
There's often a psychological reason I've read why people choose to eat certain things and also to consume certain kinds of things, to listen to certain kinds of things, to watch certain types of media.
Well, TV's horrible. Anything that's probably by, any of the media is all that's, the media is owned by certain people who have billions of dollars,
Mm.
and if they're pushing an agenda that they want everybody to hear, then what will happen is you will hear that agenda, and then if you keep on hearing it again and again and again and again and again, then you have a situation where everyone believes that's the truth. Yeah,
Oh,
and so, I mean, the word ain't, AIN apostrophe T, was not in the dictionary when I was
mm,
growing up,
mm,
and because it was used so frequently, you know, it became, quote unquote, normal. And when something becomes normal, like a lot of people say that's my bad. It's really poor English. And so, if I interview somebody, to work for me and they use that, I don't hire them.
Mm,
It's just because, communication, words hold a lot of power and they hold a lot of energy. So be careful what you name your kids, and or your dog, and because they will become that energy field that that name has. Everything is frequency. And people
yeah,
go, oh, that's crap. It's not true because everything has molecules in it. So the table that my computer's on right now has a different molecular configuration. My body has a different molecular configuration, which makes me a human being. And there's, in some instances, between primates, and us, there's not a lot of difference except for a couple pieces of DNA.
yeah.
And so it's just how it all pieces together.
Yeah, how it all pieces together. And so I'm going to segue into this other thing that I wanted to ask you about that I'm very curious about. I know a lot of people. I have a few friends, but I know a lot of people. But I
Hmm.
have some people that I'm close to that tend to say things about themselves. And I try to tell them, don't say that. You're going to make it happen. They say, well, I just like food. I live to eat. I don't eat to live. I'll always be this way. I'll always want to eat more than I want to and I'll go on a diet and then I'll gain the weight back, and then I'll eat again. I live to
Hmm.
eat, and that's just the way I am. And every time they say it, in my opinion, they're like etching it in stone within their psyche because they've
Well,
already,
that's quite true because what you think, where your mind goes, your body follows. That's a
yeah,
Chinese proverb. And
mm,
a lot of people who say they can't believe them, they're not going to be able to. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't,
yeah.
dot, dot, dot.
Dot, dot, dot. That's true. I feel fortunate that the people who raised me because it's interesting. I'm not talking about myself, but I see how I am different than some people that have certain problems is I was always called out. If I said something that was negative about myself, I was always
Hmm.
called out. Don't say that about yourself. If you say that about yourself, that's what you're going to be. That's who you're going to be. Say something positive,
Well,
but
they didn't lie to you.
yeah,
It's just like, if you are what you think, then you will, and if you eat, you are what you eat. You're not what you have to look at what you're eating because you will
yeah.
become it. It's important to understand that self-talk is huge. And when
Yeah,
you have the self-talk that's negative, then, don't expect great results, and you're feeling like, why is it I always have a black cloud around me? Well, stop talking that
stop
way.
saying that about
And,
yourself.
right, it's just like if you say that the possibilities are limited for you, then the possibilities will be
Is
limited for you because you'll be short-sighted.
mhm,
But if you look in the realm of possibility, it's just like, well, what is possible? It's like, what can I accomplish today? And don't lose sleep over it because you need your sleep in order to think clearly. And if you don't think, if you don't sleep well enough, then you're not going to be able to think, clearly. And a lot of times, sleep deprivation mimics being like, under the influence of alcohol.
yes. Yes, I think there's a
So,
law in New York
yeah.
State that if you drive and you get in an accident and it's because you were sleep deprived, I
Hmm.
think there's something about, it's almost like you can get points on your license. I don't know the details of that, but I've heard of that. I remember reading a story about someone that got in a car crash because he stayed up for 2 days straight,
Hmm.
and then he
Oh, that
could
happens all the time. Actually, the statistic on that's pretty high. I don't remember the stat on it.
mhm,
I gave a talk one time
oh,
that we were referencing in a sleep summit that I was involved in. And we were talking, they were asking questions and talking about sleep deprivation and how it mimics alcoholism, not alcoholism, being under the influence of alcohol. And, what your reaction time is slowed down, so it's just like if you're like tired and driving, it's just like, pull over the road and meditate for 20 minutes so you can regain some of your energy and your foresight and and your level of concentration.
yes, yes.
Zoom
Ca
in.
Zoom in, yes. Can
And
we talk about the subconscious and how powerful that is? 'Cause,
sure.
I did some studies on the subconscious, and I realized how powerful it is, and that the subconscious really rules everything within us. Could you share what your thoughts are about the subconscious mind and just explain some of that to my audience? Those,
Sure, you have 3 brains. One's primitive, one's mammalian, and one's your conscious that we're talking in this perspective right
yes.
now.
Hmm.
And the lizard brain is the one that's always on survival mode. It's the one that, like you want it to work when the saber-toothed tiger is in front of you or the guy pulls in front of your car. You want it, like when your instinct tells you, I think I should like not go there. Don't go there then. And then you have your mammalian brain. Your mammalian brain is a brain that, it stores all your emotions. It shows everything that ever happened to you in your life. So and what it does is like if certain circumstances present itself again, your mammalian brain goes, "Oh yeah, I remember that." It's just like and if you don't change the talk that it's having, because it talks to the lizard brain, and the lizard brain's going like, "Oh, yeah, that's a cool thing, but, you weren't successful at that before, so why are you trying it now?" You know? But the mammalian brain's going, "Yeah, but a couple times I did it and I was successful," but the lizard's brain's gonna say, "Yo, you don't wanna focus on that, you wanna focus on when it didn't work." Because you don't wanna put yourself in that situation again. You don't wanna expose yourself to, being hurt. Like, if you fall in love with somebody, you keep on falling in love with the wrong person, then you got to ask yourself like, why is that? What is it about that style of person? Because it doesn't matter what color they are, it doesn't matter what size they are, but what is it about that person that is the attraction factor? And who's doing the talking? So if you can change the message that the mammalian brain's getting about things like that, then you can change your outcomes and it will quell the conversation that the lizard brain's having, because you want to control what's the lizard brain saying. Like, when you're saying affirmations, when your conscious brain, like, I am healthy, vital, active, successful human being, then you want to be able to, you're controlling that. And that's talking to the mammalian brain. And the mammalian's brain going, oh, yeah, I remember when you were healthy. I remember when you were successful. It's just like, and then you have to ask yourself a question, another positive question, which is like, why is it that I always am healthy? Why is it I always make good choices? And the mammalian brain will search for the answer, which will make the lizard brain kind of be here and you can keep on knocking him off your shoulder, and then you can have more control and command of your life, and so that's a really key component. So that lizard brain, you have a mammalian brain. Actually, the mammalian brain is the cornerstone to marketing, because what they do is they take you from your pain point and they take you to pleasure. And that's the biggest thing in marketing that they use. And when they're talking to, like, if you're looking at the what brain are they talking to when you're watching an advert on TV,
Mhm.
or when you're reading something that's really positive for you. So like the things that your parents or whoever told you, it's just like, I tell people to start your day off on a positive note. It's a lot easier to sustain than starting off on a negative note, then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon realizing you have to go take your third shower because you need to wash those electrons off of your body that are making you go like, ugh. Or when you look in, the mirror, instead of seeing your whole essence, you say like, "Oh, look at the lines I've got right here," or, "Oh, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good enough." And instead of saying like, "Wow, Jane Bond, 007."
Jane Bond, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jane Bond, Bond,
Practice it
Jane
every
Bond,
day. Jane, who are you? Jane Bond,
Jane,
double oh
Jane,
007.
Jane Bond. Yes. Ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. I could get into
Mhm.
that one, I like it.
Yep,
I think
Goldfinger.
yeah, Goldfinger, yes, that's right, and it's not the middle one, it's the thumb.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you a story about the middle finger if you're interested.
Oh,
The
sure.
middle finger doesn't have the sensory as the other fingers do. So when I went to chiropractic school, we took a Bible and we would pull hair out of our head and we would put it on the pages because the pages were like rice paper, right? And they're very thin. So we would put the hair on there and we would close our eyes and we would feel over because we're increasing and training this finger, it's just like to be more sensitive. So, when, I call that's actually called the chiropractic finger. And so
Really?
on the book, you would be able to feel, like, and I think I made it down to like 77 pages or something like that, where, and then I got bored with it. Um, but it's just like, that finger here, if you can train it, to be more sensitive, because as a chiropractor, that's my first training, you know, I touch people's backs all the time. I touch their wrists, I touch their energy. I like touch their back, I do muscle testing. So I have to be very sensitive to when the muscle actually engages. And so there's a lot of those pieces of the puzzle that help support people, because we're here to talk about those things that are help support people. That's why chiropractic is, so good for people. But that's the story of the middle finger,
The middle finger,
the
you
middle
know?
chiropractic finger.
So I'm wondering, do you do something that's called, I've heard of this, applied kinesiology when you do the
Mhm,
muscle testing,
mhm. Oh,
you know?
yeah, it's wonderful.
It's valid, and it's interesting how you can even find out what you're allergic to with
It
that.
can. It's what it does is gives you a subclinical value, of whether or not you'd have to really do the ultimate test to see whether what your food sensitivity tests are. But in the state of New York, you can't do those. You can't order those.
Why
Food
not?
sen food sensitivity tests, they don't allow them. They think they're felonious. And,
Oh,
so you can't you if you wanted to do, like, a food sensitivity test, you'd have to have someone in, like, in New Jersey go buy it for you, and have it delivered
oh,
there. The only state in the union, like, preventing people from practicing, or it's like, because it isn't like a definitive answer. I mean, a lot of Western medicine tests aren't definitive either,
yeah.
and so I always find that very strange, being that I'm in New York, and when I found that, I just like, wow, it just that there's workarounds, so if people really want to get it, they need to get it from a different source outside the state, and then, bring it in.
But I think also, the work that you do, you're working with professionals in different fields, I imagine. So many people need what you have to offer.
Well, that's true. They do. I think everyone needs what I have to offer. And, so I've worked with elite athletes. I used to work the Boston Marathon, and we had hands on Kenyan runners. I know what the Kenyan runners eat before, and how they sustain their energy.
Mm,
And
mm,
I've had, experience with the LPGA. I worked the first, Special Olympics at
mhm,
Harvard way back
mhm,
when, as long to ages ago.
yeah,
Windsurfing events, women's pro volleyball, men's pro volleyball. It was such those were fun summers, to be able to help athletes, especially elite athletes elevate. I went and studied in China, and we worked at but the Olympic camp in Beijing, and we were there on the special educational exchange, and then was also able to see. This is before China had any of the facades for the Olympics, but
yeah.
they were. It was really amazing. I just like I've never seen such tall people in my life. The women's pro, I am tall. I'm 6 feet tall, but the women's
Really?
pro,
Oh,
volleyball people, I only came up to their shoulders. I mean, they were really
what?
super tall,
That's
and
is that a normal thing? I mean, is that like some kind of a gene mutation?
well,
Be so
the
tall, like a
genet the
oh,
y Olympians are only in China are only allowed to marry Olympians, the last that I looked. And
wow.
so if they marry outside of the Olympian, ecosystem, then they're no
Mhm.
longer on the Olympic team. So, I
Wow.
mean, that was then. I don't know what the ruling is now.
I had no idea. I just learned something I had no idea about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And China's it was pretty interesting when I was there. I mean, it was, still, not developed, as
Mhm.
much. When I went to Shanghai, that was towards the end of our trip, and, that was, I've never seen so many people in my life. I mean, it was how, um navigating that city was a real chore. Let's
Okay.
just say that,
Okay. Why is
chore.
that? Why was it hard?
Um, it's just very convoluted. We rented bikes in one city that we were in and went for a bike ride, and my bike was like almost the wheel was like wobbling like this, and it was I thought it was going to fall apart. And I was counting because you can't read the street names. You can't read there's the numbers on the buses was all in Chinese.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're like playing on lark, and it's just like, and you needed to remember how to get back to where the bike place was at. And after I went, my rule was to go right left, right left, make it through this town. And at some
Yeah.
point in time, I thought, I better start back now.
Yeah,
you know,
because it's getting a little complex.
Right, for sure. But it was really and the bike I thought for sure was gonna fall apart. So it was more that one thing of getting back. But there's places in China that are really quite beautiful. Um, and that was special. We were treated incredibly well when we were there. But we were at a diplomat level
Mhm.
when we came into the country and when we left also. We didn't travel as normal tourists.
Okay. I was gonna ask you how you were received as an American there.
That was a long time ago,
Yeah.
my hair is pretty dark, and so
Mhm.
it's just my translator said to me, he said, "Do you hear what people say when they're walking by you?" And I said, I laughed. I said, "I'm supposed to understand they're talking about me." And so she said, she goes, "Because you have such dark hair." And I always wear red lipstick's my signature color, but she said it's amazing because they're saying like, "Oh, look at she must be Chinese, and have because of my dark hair,
Mhm.
not because of the lipstick, but it was amazing. There was we went in the interior. We saw it was, we went there for an educational exchange, and then we went on a tour. So it was good.
Sounds like a real good thing. It sounds like a
Mhm.
really fun
It
thing,
was when we went, it was like ultra cheap. The whole trip cost me 2,500 and I was there 3 weeks.
and you
Now
felt safe.
now you'd probably spent that like, in 3 days. It's
Wow. So
mhm.
Chinese, um, are very much, I feel, from what I've read, because I don't know everything, on the cutting edge of certain wellness things, things that have been done in their culture for years, and we tend to pick up on this Eastern way of thinking, now late as people are questioning Western medicine and Western approaches.
Well, the first Chinese needle I think was found in 6 BC and it was a piece of jade as a needle. And, when Richard Nixon with his entourage to China, they witnessed somebody, being operated on using, acupuncture and, um, and then stim. And so stim is electrical current that's going in. So you put needles in. So people in dentistry, they use that in some places in the States. But I'm also a trained acupuncture physician. It's just like we were in a hospital observing and doing rounds with Chinese doctors, not understanding a single thing that was really going on at the time because I wasn't a Chinese doctor at the time, and so but I went as a chiropractic sports physician, um, so that we could make an exchange with the Olympics, and the Olympic people at where they study at in China. Hmm.
Many decades ago, I was involved with some things for my own health reasons, and it seemed that the alternative um, ways of approaching it and the integrative medicine was far more effective for me than going just into basic, I'll say, RX. There's
Uh huh.
something about the hypnosis, and there's all kinds of stuff that they've been doing for centuries,
Hmm.
that we're kind of a little bit late
Well,
on.
they were eons ahead in health, um, and environmental health and health for like centuries. Like when they were selling and having this like knowledge, this explosion of knowledge in that in the systems, Europe was going through bubonic plague and things like that. So they were. They didn't have the exposure to a lot of the same things that were happening in Europe at the time. But if
Yeah.
you look at every dynasty in China, they usually last around 200 years. And at the end of the 200 years, every dynasty got corrupt. And that's the reason why they faltered. And
Oh.
then they would evolve into the next dynasty, and that type of thing.
I want to ask you, before we close out, if you would be willing to come back and talk to me again and explore this further, because I just think that what you do and the type of thing that you're practicing and the way you're helping people is so important, especially now. I feel like things are not getting necessarily better. I'm not going to say they're getting worse, but I think that they need to change, you
You can
know?
say that they're getting worse. By the year 2030,
Mhm.
50% of the population is going to be diagnosed with some chronic illness or disease. So I don't think they're
Yeah.
getting better.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have to really change um, their mentality about their health and their environment because they
Yeah.
have to start asking questions and have ask more, of the important questions of, why is this going on? Why is it that my water, I really can't drink tap water? And why is it that in Europe, they have banned so many chemicals that in the United States are used all the time?
Mhm.
And so why is the government here trying to poison us. So, I really think that's marvelous that RFK is in the position that he's in, and has the knowledge that he has,
Mhm.
to be able to really, expose some of the big people and some of the big offenders, like, Monsanto, for instance, with their
Mm.
glycophosphates. Why that is still on the market, I have no clue.
Yeah,
You know,
I
and
know.
then other chemicals, and you gotta figure like, well, what is it that I can do about it? The problem is that, that when they're spraying vegetables, it's just like spraying them when they first start growing and they spray them before they go to market. And you don't can't wash that stuff off your food. That's why you buy organic food.
Yes.
It's just like you don't want to be eating chemicals because those chemicals cause cancer. And even a good example of that, they've been making sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate is man-made, it's not natural. So if you ever see it on a natural product, they're lying to you. And then also know that when it's with vitamin C and sodium benzoate, 'cause they used to try to say sodium benzoate is a preservative. Vitamin C, we all know what that is, but we
Mhm.
don't necessarily get enough, especially if you bruise. So when you put sodium benzoate and vitamin C together, you get benzene. Do you know what benzene is?
Yes.
Ben be Benzene is
Mhm.
gasoline, and
Yes.
so it's just like it's carcinogenic. They're tetrachlorohydrocarbons. It's carcinogenic. It's
Yeah.
just like, why would you put it on your skin? 65% of what you put on your skin gets absorbed into your body. You've got to read labels
Yeah.
and you have to know what it means. If you can't pronounce something, who cares? But keep a list of what they are when you're looking at stuff. In fact, there's a really wonderful app. I'm going to give them a big, thumbs up for it. And that's let me just take a quick look so I tell you guys I have two of them right about in the same place. And it's called Yuka. It's Yuka. And when
Oh,
you use the app Yuka,
uh-huh.
Yuka, it's a free app. When
Mhm.
you use it, you can take it and put it on the barcode. And if that product is in Yuka, like if you go into Trader Joe's, you
Mhm.
can like see some of the things you think that, oh, this is really good for you. But when you put the Yuka app on it, or if you go in and you're looking at things that have like cough drops or something like that and you're buying, like, why do you buy sugar-free cough drops? If you read it, it has carbohydrate, it has corn in it, it's carbohydrate.
Yeah.
Why buy stuff like that?
Mhm.
Why would you buy poison and put it in your body? I don't understand that.
Conditioning.
You
Conditioning
know?
and brainwashing.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
true.
It's like, but the awareness is what's got to change. I think, like 10, 15 years ago, when someone told you that they were eating organic, you're going, wacko, hippie, it's just like now you're having, it's just like, it's normal, more normal to have organic food. And the other thing is to know that like, if you buy something that's grass fed, you want to have grass fed and grass fed finish is better. Grass fed is okay, but grass fed finish, because when it's not grass fed finish, they're giving other things, other foods that puff it up and puff the weight up so that you're eating a lot of different things. And, if you're not eating chicken, chicken has arsenic in it, especially for dog food. I mean,
Yes.
I'm a big dog lover. It's just like, I had a really special diet for my dog when he was alive. I had him for 16 years. His breed usually only lives 12 years. And he had, when I look at, I read labels all the time. It's just like, why is this in here? Why is sodium dioxide in something? And I said, it doesn't make sense to me. Why is methyl stearate in it? Like, can't you find something else? Or polysorbate? Why can't you use frankincense? There's other things that you can put, natural things that people can put into it. But if you look up, pro tip, you look up the chemicals in foods and that type of thing that are, banned in Europe. You should follow the same suit in the United States. It's better
Yes.
than what they say is normal.
Well, when we have you back on, and I hope that you'll agree to come on again, I wanna talk to you about the facelift that you were talking about. You do some kind of a face thing,
Well,
facelift?
I just want to invite everybody who's here is listening to this. I don't know
Yeah.
how soon this is going to go out, but everyone's here. I have a course that I teach called the
Mm.
15 Minutes to Ageless Vitality Facelift Without Surgery. And it's 18 exercises that I teach over a 12-week period of time, plus looking at nutrition. Plus, I have some trade secrets from pro tippers who are in the industry. And we have mastermind calls and we have the exercises and we have a good old time and we turn back the hands of time. We have
Hey.
fun, we laugh, and we elevate, and that's coming up very shortly, and the way that people can find that, if you don't mind me mentioning it,
Yes, go ahead.
is, askpat.org is where
AskPat.org.
how you'll find the next workshop, and if you're just say like, "Hey, I just wanna do it because I wanna look younger, I don't wanna use any chemicals,
Mhm.
I don't wanna get cut, I don't want injections," then you wanna actually join the program and join the membership, and that is askpat.org, same thing, askpat.org/join, and it'll take you to the checkout page for the program with all the other information on it too,
Sounds
right?
great, and I'm gonna tell the audience that I am just, like, totally awestruck by you.
Oh, thank you.
I am so
Thank you.
awestruck by you because we've had a lot of different people on, and I'm easily awestruck, but not always, and
Mhm.
you've been probably the most comprehensive and the most, I guess, you, like,
Thanks.
have everything, and,
Thanks.
I just love this. There's a lot of people that just, whatever. They're what
Mhm,
our guests are all wonderful, but there's something about the stuff that you do that really speaks to me personally,
mhm.
and generally speaking, when someone's on the show is because I found something very unusual, very special about them that I wanna share with my audience. I'm gonna call it my audience, and I have a feeling they're gonna wanna contact you. So,
Right.
just before we close, just tell them what is the best way someone can contact you to get an appointment with you, to work with you?
Well, in order to, chat with me, my,
Mhm,
calendar link is on my, identifier for this where my frame is Dr. Pat Boulogne.
mhm,
And then Dr. Pat Boulogne, if you put all the letters together, you'll
mhm.
find me on Instagram and also LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is my primary platform.
Yeah.
And then, I'm also on TikTok, but I have, I very, very, that and Twitter, I have very limited access to it. I don't use it quite a lot. But in my webpage is
Mhm,
healthteamnetwork.com. It's not plural.
mm,
So healthteamnetwork.com and LinkedIn. So it'd be LinkedIn, IN forward slash, Dr. Pat Boulogne. And then on my webpage, you'll see different ways that you can interact with me. There's a questionnaire on the first page that you can take a health assessment. And, there's a work with me page so that you can see how to like, get a complimentary strategy call. There's a lot of really cool things on my website that you can, interact with and that. But those are the ways that you can best get a hold of me.
okay, but in a nutshell, LinkedIn.com. LinkedIn is, I find my favorite social media platform,
Hmm.
and I'm so
It's
glad
my
that I'm
primary.
yes, I'm really into LinkedIn. A lot of artists didn't understand why I would, tell them, "You should be on LinkedIn. You're sole proprietor. You're an artist. What's the matter with you?" And finally, people have caught on, but I'm glad I caught on before them.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have found you. But thank you so much, Dr. Pat. You're just extraordinary. I really believe
Oh,
that.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And I'm gonna definitely, tell as many people as I can about this. So I'm gonna say goodbye to you this time, and I can hardly wait to have you back on. And
Oh,
I'm gonna
thank you
say,
very much. I appreciate it.
oh, as do I. And I'm gonna tell my audience, see you next time. I'm gonna bring another extraordinary guest for you, as I always do, because I try to find the most interesting people I can find on the planet. Bye-bye.